All right, in between videos, I went ahead and populated all the elements for my table out here. So I have each of my rows, and then I have each of the data for each of the rows. But this first row isn't really data, it's a header, right? That's the heading for that table. I am going to change this from table data TD to TH for my first row. And look what happened to Monday. It got formatted differently, didn't it? Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing for all of my first column. I'm going to make them all THs. I'm going to make those all header data. So what's a TH? It marks something as being a header. Okay. And it's still a piece of table data. It works just like table data. It works just like TD, except by default, TH gets formatted a little bit differently. It gets bold and centered by default. That's what Chrome does for it, at least. I think that's what all the browsers do for it. Later on, we'll learn how to set our formatting for that. But instantly, those become headers and get formatted differently. So my table looks a little different. I don't have borders turned on for table headers, so you don't see those in there. I could add that real quick to my CSS and turn them back on. There we go. So you can see them. They still work just like a piece of data. They just get bolded by default. Okay. So know that about table headers. The TH tag is something that you can use, and we'll learn how to format it later. One other element that I want to talk about for a table is caption. We have a caption tag. And of course, it has a corresponding /caption. And we can put whatever we want between there. I'm going to put Mr. Geiger's schedule. And save that, and we'll refresh it. And notice it puts it up here. We can format captions to be above or below our table. And we'll see how to do that when we get to our CSS. All right. So the next thing I want to show you is what happens when we don't have equal numbers of columns and rows in our table. So I'm going to go over here. Let me add, I'll just go to this column, to this row here, and I'm just going to add an extra piece of table data. Which technically would be my Saturdays, and I like to spend Saturdays in my shop. So I'm going to put shop on my Saturday. Now what happens to my table? So immediately on this row, which was my second row, right, here's my first row that's full of table headers. Here's my second row is full of table data. I had a sixth item, and it just went out and made a sixth column for it. Okay. Now these other rows don't have columns in it. Okay. So you have to be aware of that. You want things to match up. All right. So let's take a look at my lunch period. Does it really make sense to repeat lunch 5 times when it's always in the same time spot? So what can I do there? I can do something called cell spanning. And when we cell span, we can span columns, meaning I can get one thing to go over the place of 2 columns, or 3 columns, or 4 columns, or 5 columns, however many I want. And we can also do row spanning, and that's where we basically merge cells together vertically. So let me do an example for my lunch period. I'm going to go to, let's get rid of shop. I don't want shop anymore. Let's go down here to my lunch period. I am going to put in here TD, and I am going to tell it that I want this column, the Columnspan, and I'll put equals 5. Okay. So this lunch is going to take up 5 columns. What's going to happen to these? We just saw that a second ago. Let me save it and refresh it. Okay. So this lunch period now covers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. And then all my extra ones got added. This is column 6, 7, 8, and 9 now. All right. So really, I can take these out. I only need one piece of data. Accidentally got rid of my row here. Okay. My one piece of data, lunch, is now going to span all 5 columns. And since it takes 5 columns, I don't need 5 entries for that period. So that's a column span. I can also do that for rows. So let's look here. All these junior labs with database. Okay. Why do I need to repeat that 5 times? It's always Monday mornings, right? And it's the whole morning, even though it takes 4 periods. It's one giant lab. So let's go to my first entry for junior lab database, and I'm going to do Rowspan equals, and I want it to go 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So I'm going to put 4 in there. And I'll save it. Refresh. Now my row span, it spans over 4 rows now, but look what it did down here. It added a bunch of extra stuff. Okay, since this first entry is taking up 4 rows, that means I don't need them in my other rows. Take them all out. There we go. And then I could do the same thing also for Java Day. I can have it span 4 rows. Means I don't need them down here. Oh, that looks much better. Okay. And then Wednesday, I could do the same thing for web. Means I don't need the Wednesday entries down here. That's looking a little bit more efficient, isn't it? And then Thursday and Friday, I have junior lab all morning. What's the best way to do that? I think I want to do a row span separately. I still want them to appear as the same. Now, I still need all my rows in here. I still want all my rows in here. Okay. Now, everything's shrunk down. It doesn't look like 4 rows anymore, does it? So maybe I need to add something on each row. Let's add an empty table header on the first row. I'm not going to put anything in it. Okay. I'm not going to put anything in that row, in that spot, but I'm going to do that at the beginning of each of my other rows. And I'm going to use header because it's the header for the row, right? I'm going to put 1 here. Okay. And then on this row, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put a 2 there. And in this row, I'll do the same thing. I'll put a 3 there. Same thing on this row. Put a 4 there. And I'm going to do the same thing here on this row. I'm going to put a 5 there because 5th period is my lunch. Take a look at things. There we go. That's starting to look better. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can see all the periods there. 5th period is my lunch. Okay. Still need some margins and padding and things like that, and we'll look at those in a little bit. I will, let's clean up some of our code here. So I still have 5 rows, and I still have 5 columns.